Europe begins to explore. European explorations. For centuries, the Roman Empire dominated Europe. By AD 500, however, Rome's political and economic system had collapsed, disconnecting Western Europe from the rest of the world. Without a central authority, the region experienced a decline in trade, and the political system became fragmented. Most people lived on manors or in villages ruled by local lords, who kept the peace only in the lands they controlled. This period, lasting roughly AD 500 to AD 1500, is known as the Middle Ages. Expanding horizons. In 1095, Pope Urban II called for Christians to win back their religious holy places in the Middle East, later called the Crusades. The resulting expeditions, while violent, brought Western Europeans into contact with Arab civilizations in the Middle East. This new cultural contact helped end the European isolation of the Middle Ages. The Europeans began trading with the Arabs and buying luxury goods that Arab traders obtained from East Asia: spices, sugar, melons, tapestries, silk, and other items. As demand for East Asian goods increased, Italian city-states such as Venice, Pisa, and Genoa grew wealthy, moving goods between the Middle East and Western Europe. By 1200, Italian and Arab merchants controlled most of the trade in the Eastern Mediterranean and charged high prices for the goods that Western Europeans wanted. Yet, the flow of goods from the East was a long land-based route through Asia that was often unpredictable. Such uncertainty increased the need to find another way to acquire trade goods from the East. By the 1300s, Europeans had a strong economic motive to begin exploring the world for a route to Asia that bypassed the Italian city-states and the Arab kingdoms. Yet, the Western Europe did not have the wealth or technology to begin explorations. All that began to change as the rise of towns and the merchant class provided kings and queens a new source of wealth they could tax. They sought to protect trade routes, enforce trade laws, and establish a common currency within their kingdoms. Increasingly, rulers began to unify their kingdoms and create strong central governments. By the mid-1400s, four strong states, Portugal, Spain, England, and France, had emerged. Starting with Portugal in the early 1400s, all four began financing exploration in the hope of expanding their trade by finding a new route to Asia. Scientific advances. The political and economic changes that encouraged Western Europeans to explore the world would not have mattered if they had lacked the technology necessary to launch their explorations. In order to find a water route to Asia, Western Europeans needed navigational instruments and ships capable of long-distance travel. Fortunately, at about the same time that the new unified kingdoms were emerging in Western Europe, European scholars rediscovered the works of ancient poets, philosophers, geographers, and mathematicians. They also read the teachings of Arab scholars. This explosion of learning was called the Renaissance. By studying Arab texts, Western Europeans acquired the knowledge of a key navigational instrument, the astrolabe, a device invented by the ancient Greeks and refined by Arab navigators. An astrolabe uses the position of the sun to determine direction, latitude, and local time. Europeans also acquired the compass from Arab traders. Invented in China, the compass reliably shows the direction of magnetic north. Late in 1400s, European shipwrights began to make technological advances to their ships. They outfitted ships with triangular-shaped lateen sails perfected by Arab traders. These sails made it possible to sail against the wind and use multiple masts with several smaller sails hoisted one above the other, which improved the ship's speed. They also moved the rudder from the side to the stern, making ships easier to steer and maneuver. All of these advances made a ship faster and easier to sail. In the 1400s, a Portuguese ship called the Caravel incorporated many of these improvements. Portuguese explorations. Sailing their caravels, Portuguese explorers became the first Europeans to search for a sea route to Asia. Portugal's Prince Henry dispatched ships to explore Africa's west coast. In 1488, a Portuguese ship commanded by Bartolomeu Dias reached the southern tip of Africa. A decade later, 4 ships commanded by Vasco da Gama sailed from Portugal, rounded Africa, and reached the southwest coast of India. The long-sought water route to Eastern Asia had been found. African cultures. 3 great empires arose in West Africa between the AD 400s and the 1400s. All 3 gained wealth and power by controlling the trade in gold and salt. Between the 3rd and the 5th centuries, Berber nomads began using camels to transport salt, gold, ivory, ostrich feathers, and furs from regions south of the Sahara to North Africa. In the AD 400s, the Empire of Ghana emerged. Located between the salt mines of the Sahara and the gold mines to the south, Ghana prospered by taxing trade goods. Ghana became a Muslim kingdom in the 1100s, but frequent wars with the Muslims of the Sahara took their toll. Equally damaging was a decline in food production. Intensive cultivation had left Ghana's land exhausted and its farmers unable to feed its people. At the same time, new gold mines opened to the east. Trade routes to these mines bypassed Ghana, and by the early 1200s, the empire had collapsed. East of Ghana, the Empire of Mali arose. Like Ghana, Mali built its wealth and power by controlling the salt and gold trade. Mali reached its peak in the 1300s. By that time, the opening of a new gold mine had shifted the trade routes farther east and helped make the city of Timbuktu, now known as Tombouctou, a great center of trade and Muslim scholarship. Along the Niger River, the Empire of Songhai emerged. When Mali began to decline, the ruler of Songhai, Soni Ali, seized Timbuktu in 1468. Songhai remained powerful until 1591, when Moroccan troops shattered its armies. As in other parts of the world, slavery existed in African society. Most of the people enslaved in African societies had been captured in war. Many African societies would either ransom captives back to their people or absorb them into their society. West African slavery began to change with the arrival of European and Arab traders who exchanged goods for enslaved people. Slavery began to take on a more racial component. Sugar growers from Spain and Portugal also sought enslaved Africans. In 1300s and 1400s, Spain and Portugal established sugarcane plantations on the Canary and Madeira Islands of the northwest coast of Africa. The climate and soil there were favorable for growing sugarcane, a crop that requires rigorous manual labor. Sugarcane must be chopped with heavy knives. Sugar growers used enslaved Africans to do the difficult work. Exploring America. By the 1400s, most educated Europeans knew that the world was round. On European maps of the time, only the Mediterranean, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa's northern coast were shown in any detail. At that time, Europeans rediscovered the works of Claudius Ptolemy, written in the AD 100s. His geography became very influential. His basic system of lines of latitude and longitude is still used today. European mariners also consulted the works of a 12th century Arab geographer named Al-Drisi. By studying the maps of Ptolemy and Al-Drisi, Western mariners obtained an idea of the geography of the eastern African coast and the Indian Ocean. Based on these sources, Italian navigator Christopher Columbus believed it was possible to circumnavigate the Earth to find a trade route to Asia by sailing west. He predicted that the end of Spain and the beginning of India are not far apart. Beginning in 1488, Columbus sought financial backing from the King of Portugal to make a voyage. Portuguese scholars, however, determined that Columbus had greatly underestimated the distance to Asia. When the Portuguese navigator Bartolomeu Diaz successfully routed the southern tip of Africa in 1488, the Portuguese lost all interest in supporting Columbus's exploration. Spain claims America. In 1492, Spain's King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella agreed to finance Columbus's venture. Columbus and his 3 ships, the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, left Spain in August 1492. He sailed westward across the uncharted Atlantic Ocean until he reached the Bahamas in October. He then headed farther into the Caribbean, searching for gold. He found the islands of Cuba and Hispaniola. In March 1493, Columbus returned to Spain with gold, parrots, spices, and captured Native Americans. Ferdinand and Isabella were pleased with Columbus's findings, but it put them in conflict with Portugal, which had claimed control over the Atlantic route to Asia. To resolve the rivalry, the 2 nations appealed to the Pope. In 1493, Pope Alexander VI established a line of demarcation, an imaginary line running down the middle of the Atlantic. Spain would control everything west of the line. Portugal would control everything to the east. In 1494, the Treaty of Tordesillas moved the line of demarcation to about 320 miles west of the Cape Verde Islands. Among European powers, the treaty confirmed Portugal's right to control the route around Africa to India. It also recognized Spain's claim to most of the Americas. Columbus sailed back across the Atlantic with 17 ships and more than 1,200 Spanish colonists, hoping to find more gold. He made 2 more trips, mapping part of the coastline of South America and Central America. Naming America. In 1499, an Italian named Amerigo Vespucci repeated Columbus's attempt to sail west to Asia. Exploring the coast of South America, Vespucci assumed that he had reached outermost Asia. In 1501, he made another voyage. After sailing along the coast of South America, he realized that this landmass could not be part of Asia. In 1507, a German mapmaker proposed that the new continent be named America for Amerigo the Discoverer. New Spain. In 1519, a Spaniard named Hernán Cortés sailed from Cuba to explore the Yucatan Peninsula. He brought 11 ships, 550 men, and 16 horses with him. From local rulers, Cortés learned that the Aztec had conquered many people in Yucatan Peninsula and were at war with others, including the powerful Tlaxcalan. Cortés wanted the Tlaxcalan to join him against the Aztec. Based on the size and perceived strength of Cortés's army, the Tlaxcalan agreed to ally with Cortés against the Aztecs. The Aztec Emperor Montezuma tried to ambush the Spanish and the Tlaxcalan at the city of Cholula. Warned in advance, the Spanish struck first, killing some 6,000 Cholulans. Believing Cortés was unstoppable, Montezuma then allowed the Spanish troops to enter Tenochtitlan peacefully. Sitting on an island in the center of a lake, the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan impressed the Spanish. Larger than most European cities, Tenochtitlan had more than 200,000 residents and an elaborate system of canals. Surrounded by thousands of Aztecs, Cortés decided to take Montezuma hostage. Following orders from Cortés, Montezuma had status of the Aztec gods replaced with Christian crosses and images of Virgin Mary. In June 1520, the Aztec in Tenochtitlan rebelled. The battle raged for days before the Spanish retreated to Tlaxcala. At least 450 Spaniards and more than 4,000 Aztecs died in the resistance, including Montezuma himself. Meanwhile, smallpox erupted in the region, devastating the defenders of Tenochtitlan. In 1521, Cortés returned with reinforcements and destroyed Tenochtitlan. On its ruins, the Spanish built Mexico City, which became the capital of the colony of New Spain. Cortés then sent several expeditions to conquer the rest of Central America. The men who led these expeditions became known as conquistadors or conquerors. French and Dutch settlements. Both France and the Netherlands sent explorers to the Americas and claimed land for colonies. These European nations placed their own mark on the Americas with colonies aimed more at profit than settlement. New France. In 1524, King Francis I of France sent Giovanni da Verrazzano to find the Northwest Passage, the hoped for northern route through North America to the Pacific Ocean. Verrazzano explored the Atlantic coast, but found no sign of a passage. 10 years later, Jacques Cartier made 3 trips to North America, exploring and mapping the St. Lawrence River. In 1602, King Henry IV of France authorized a group of French merchants to establish a colony in what is today Canada. The merchants hired Samuel de Champlain to help them. In 1608, Champlain founded Quebec, which became the capital of the colony of New France. The company that founded New France wanted to make money from the fur trade, so they did not need settlers to clear the land and build farms. As a result, the colony grew slowly. Most of the fur traders made their homes among the Native Americans with whom they traded. In 1663, King Louis XIV made New France a royal colony, and the French government began sending new settlers. By the 1670s, New France had nearly 7,000 colonists. As their colony grew, the French continued to explore North America. In 1673, a fur trader named Louis Joliet and a Jesuit priest named Jacques Marquette began searching for a waterway the Algonquian people called the Big River. The two men finally found it, the Mississippi. In 1682, René Robert Cavelier de La Salle followed the Mississippi all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. He claimed the region for France and named the territory Louisiana in honor of King Louis XIV. The first permanent French settlement in the region was Biloxi, founded in 1699. The French in Louisiana realized that the crops that could be grown in the South, such as sugar, rice, and indigo, require abundant labor. As a result, they began importing enslaved Africans to work on their plantations. The arrival of the French at the mouth of the Mississippi River convinced the Spanish in 1690 to build their first mission in East Texas, San Francisco de los Tejas. Spanish settlers arrived in 1716 to secure Spain's claim and block French expansion in the area. New Netherlands. In 1609, the Dutch East India Company hired English navigator Henry Hudson to locate a passage to Asia through North America in order to benefit the company's spice trade. Instead, Hudson's search led him to the wide river that came to bear his name, located in what is now New York. The Dutch named the region New Netherlands and established the settlement of New Amsterdam on Manhattan Island. The settlers depended on fur trading for their livelihood. Like New France, the economy of New Netherlands was focused on the fur trade, and the population grew slowly. As late as 1646, New Netherlands only had about 1,500 European settlers.